All right, we're about to dive into one of the most mind-bending and honestly one of the strangest thought experiments in all of philosophy. It's a concept designed to poke at the deepest mystery there is, what's going on inside your own head.
So let me just start by asking you a question. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're having an experience. You're hearing my voice, you're seeing this slide, you can probably feel the temperature of the room. But is that inner world of yours, is it just a bunch of electrical signals and chemicals firing in your brain? Or is it something more? That question, right there, is the absolute heart of the zombie argument.
To really get what's at stake here, we first have to understand the problem this whole thing is trying to solve. It's what the philosopher David Chalmers famously called the hard problem of consciousness.
You see, the issue isn't what consciousness does. Things like processing information or reacting to the world around you, science is actually getting pretty good at figuring that stuff out. That's the easy problem. No, the hard problem is, why do we feel anything at all? Why does all that brain activity create the taste of pizza, or the feeling of joy, or the color blue? Why isn't it all just happening in the dark, with nobody home?
And that is the central mystery, isn't it? We can map the brain, we can watch every neuron fire in real time, but we still can't explain why all that physical stuff creates this incredibly rich, private inner world. And it's right in that gap in our understanding, that's where the zombie argument makes its grand entrance. So how do you even begin to attack a problem that big? Well, if you're a philosopher, you come up with a thought experiment. And to tackle this one, they invented the philosophical zombie. Now, I need you to forget every zombie movie you've ever seen. This is not about brain-eating monsters, not even close. It's a serious intellectual tool.
Okay, so a philosophical zombie is a perfect physical duplicate of you. I mean, identical, down to the last atom. It behaves exactly like you do. It laughs at your favorite comedies, it cries during sad movies, it would even have this exact same conversation about consciousness. But here's the huge difference. On the inside, there's nothing. It's all dark. All the actions are there, but the inner experience is just gone.
And that's the absolute key. For you, there is something it is like to be you, right? There's a feeling, an experience. For the zombie, there is nothing it's like to be a zombie. It's just an empty shell, a perfect biological puppet mimicking a person.
Now this part is super important, so let's be really clear. No one, and I mean no one, is arguing that these things actually exist. The entire argument, the whole shebang, hinges on one simple question. Can you coherently imagine one? Can you conceive of a person who is physically identical to you in every way, but just lacks that inner spark of consciousness? Because if you can, the implications are just enormous.
You see, this isn't just a spooky what-if scenario. It's a structured, logical argument with steps and everything. And it's designed to force us toward a very specific and pretty radical conclusion about reality itself.
All right, so here's how the logic plays out. Premise 1. You can conceive of a zombie. It seems like you can, right? Premise 2. If something is conceivable, then it's metaphysically possible. All that means is that it isn't a logical contradiction, like a married bachelor. Which leads to the bombshell. Premise 3. If it's possible for a physically identical world to exist without consciousness, then consciousness cannot be a physical thing. And the conclusion? Consciousness must be non-physical, something extra layered on top of the physical world.
So let me just repeat that, because it is the whole point. If you can have all the physical stuff, the body, the brain, all of it, and still not have consciousness, then consciousness and the physical stuff can't be the same thing. This is a powerful, direct attack on materialism, the idea that everything that exists is purely physical.
Now, as you can probably guess, a radical conclusion like that gets a ton of pushback. I mean, materialist philosophers aren't just going to roll over and accept it. So let's check out the 3 main ways they try to fight off a philosophical zombie. Since the argument is like a chain of logic, all you have to do is break one of the links, and the whole thing comes crashing down. So opponents tend to focus their attacks on one of these 3 weak points.
So, the first line of attack is to go right for the jugular, that very first premise. This response basically says, you know what? You think you can imagine a zombie, but you actually can't. The very idea is incoherent. It's a contradiction in terms.
Think about it this way. You can say the words 2 + 2 = 5, no problem. But can you actually, truly conceive of it being true? Of course not. If you really understand what those numbers mean, the idea just falls apart. Well, the argument here is that zombies are the same way. If we fully understood how the brain works, we'd realize that its physical processes must, by definition, create consciousness.
A physical duplicate would have to be a conscious duplicate. End of story.
Okay, so the second response is a little more subtle. It says, fine, I'll grant you that I can imagine a zombie. But just because I can imagine something doesn't mean it's actually possible. This attack is aimed squarely at that second link in the argument's chain.
The classic example here is water. A few hundred years ago, you could totally conceive of water being made of something other than H2O, but we now know that's not actually possible. To be water just is to be H2O. They're the same thing. This argument says consciousness could be just like that. Maybe consciousness is a certain type of brain process. So even if we can imagine them apart, in reality, you just can't have one without the other. A zombie is therefore impossible.
And the final counter-argument? Well, it's maybe the most dismissive of them all. It essentially looks at the whole thought experiment and just says, who cares? Who cares what might be possible in some other hypothetical reality or possible world?
The focus here is on pure pragmatism. This response argues that what we need to do is understand consciousness in our universe, under our physical laws. Speculating about alternate realities where zombies might exist, well, it doesn't tell us anything useful about the connection between our brains and our experience, right here, right now. It might be a fun philosophical game, but it's irrelevant to real science.
So all this brings us right back to the beginning. And back to you. We have this incredibly powerful argument that suggests your consciousness is something non-physical. And it's met with three equally powerful counter-arguments that defend the traditional materialist worldview. So, where does that leave us? Well, the zombie argument forces us to face the limits of what we think we know about the physical world. At the same time, the defenses of materialism warn us to be skeptical of our own imagination and intuition. The truth is, there's no easy answer. This is still one of the most fiercely debated battlegrounds in the entire philosophy of mind.
And make no mistake, this isn't just some abstract academic debate. It leaves us with a practical and kind of chilling question for the future. As we build machines that can talk and reason and behave more and more like us, we're going to be faced with the ultimate problem. How will we ever be sure that the lights are actually on inside?